S3 access point is basically a security feature, and it is used to control access to a single bucket. Now what happens is that using access point, we can create different endpoints from the same bucket. With all the different endpoints, we can attach different IAM policies and permissions to these different endpoints. Meaning that, let's say you have an S3 bucket and you want to have different accesses on the same bucket for different teams. You can do that by creating different access endpoints. And one thing is that the access can be done only through URLs. There is no URI endpoint provided by the access points. So let's say we have this bucket, and what happens is that typically we create multiple access points for the same bucket. So in this case, I am showing you only 3 access points, but of course it depends on the requirement or the permission requirement that you want to implement. And each access endpoints or each access point should have its own permission. So when I say permission, these are IAM policies and IAM permissions. And then let's say you give this access endpoint to an EMR running in VPC1. So they have a different permission. A Python app which is running in VPC2 might be having a different permission. And let's say another application which is running in VPC1 itself might be having a different set of permissions. So that's what access points are used for. And creation of access points are very simple. What you have to do is that you have to go to the S3 dashboard and you have this access points here. So if you see underneath buckets, you have access grants and access points. So you can click on this and you can create multiple access points. Currently, I do not have any access endpoint created. And let me go ahead and create the access endpoint. So it's very straightforward. So we'll have to give it a name. Let's say I am creating the access endpoint for an analytics team which would be running Athena. 3IAM S3 bucket access point analytics Athena, and I provide the bucket, and I can only associate general purpose buckets. I cannot use directory buckets. So click on this bucket, and I have to mention the network origin. Network origin means where can I access this endpoint from? So do I want to access it from a VPC or do I want to access it from internet? So in this case, I'm mentioning internet, but typically it has to be from VPC. And if you enable internet, make sure to block all public access. And then you have access point policy. We'll talk about this in the security section, but remember, this is where we actually add the permission or the policy. And that's it. Create the access point. And this particular access point has been created. If you click on the access point, it will take you to the bucket, not the access point. So as you can see, this is the bucket, and let's say I open Athena tables and there are certain data sets in the Athena tables, and copy the S3 URI. And if I paste the S3 URI, so as you can see, it is basically an access endpoint ARN that has been provided, and after that it is Athena tables, customers, and etc. It is not the URI that you would expect typically that you get with S3. And if we select or copy the URL, then you can get this endpoint. So if you see, the access endpoint is a little different. This is the HTTP based URL. So 3IAM S3 bucket access endpoint analytics Athena, followed by the account number, and then S3-access point, the region, and Amazon AWS.com, followed by the folder and the bucket. The moment you select access point, it will take you to that particular bucket that we have provided the access to. And what other things that you can do? You can copy the access point alias, you can copy the ARN, and you can edit policy. And it is a major thing that we would do with access points, because we'll attach different access points with different policies. Now let me go ahead and create one more access point, and the name is 3IAM S3 bucket access point analytics glue plus EMR. I'll mention the same bucket, 3IAM Athena dataset. Now here I'm selecting a virtual private cloud. I'm not selecting internet. And if I select virtual private cloud, I'll have to provide the VPC ID. And you already have this VPC created, which is 3IAM VPC, and I'll copy the VPC ID, which is this one, and just put it there. So now I cannot use this access point anywhere other than resources which are launched in this VPC. Again, I'll block all public access. I have not attached any IAM policies or permissions. We'll do that later on. And now I can create this access point and create the access point. So I have created two different access points for the same bucket. Of course, I could have created for different buckets also. And this is for Athena, and I'm mentioning that the network origin is internet. For the second one, I'm mentioning the network origin to be virtual private cloud or VPC, and provided the VPC ID. And these are the different alias which are created for the access endpoints. If you want to see the access points for a particular bucket, that how many access points have been created for this S3 bucket, you can select the bucket, and then here we have this option called access points. If you click on this, it will show you all the access points that have been created for this particular bucket. Now for 3IAM Athena dataset, I have two access points created. Again, one is the network origin of internet, and the other one is virtual private cloud or VPC. So you can look at all the access points created for a particular bucket as well. Now I'll talk about permissions and policies, how we can use these access points to basically provide permissions. And remember, I have been using the root access so far. So whatever I have done in S3, I have been using the root access. Now, when I talk about security, I'll use some IAM users and provide some permissions to those IAM users using access points.